Welcome to the Jiu-Jitsu of Life podcast. This is episode number 90.
Yo, episode 90.
10 more. We got ourselves 100.
That's right. I cannot wait.
You actually told me about the math just a second ago.
Yeah, 90
you are
plus
correct.
10 is 100. So
I used a calculator and confirmed it. Yeah.
You stole my thunder. I was going to say that was going to be my joke. But actually, I'm not joking. I did use a calculator too.
That's true. Is it 9 more or is it 10 more?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll tell you what I'm proud of is the fact that when we set out for when we first got together and started talking, we were training together.
Mhm.
Kevin introduced us in 2013.
Yeah.
Did some boxing over at the Fit Pit.
That's right.
And I think it went. I think you and I were friends for maybe 2-3 years, maybe before I even knew what you did for a living.
Yeah, I think it was a bit. Yeah.
Our whole thing was just based around hanging out with each other and training.
Yeah.
Right. And that was our friendship. Like you didn't care you knew what I did for a living. I didn't really
did.
know what but it didn't matter. Like we were getting together on Sundays, decompress, have a great time. And, 3 years later, I find out what you do for a living, and you and I get together and we start talking about business.
Yeah.
And then I tell you, hey, I want to start investing in real estate. And by that time, I had found out that you had been investing in real estate for a very long time, and asked you if you would mentor me and show me the ropes. And you said yes, and have been ever since. And we decided to start doing this, podcast where we talk about business and real estate, but also jiu-jitsu, because we have all these common interests.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, well, what's the goal of it? Is the goal to increase business for any one of us? And it was like, nah, it's just to see if we can keep doing it, being consistent, right?
I agree.
Can we hold each other accountable and be like, we're going to knock this out every week, no matter what's going on in life. Yeah. And I think there's something to be said for that. And lo and behold, episode 90.
Yeah.
I think we've accomplished our goal. And I hope for episode, I can't wait to see episode 1,000.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's going to be
a lot of weeks. We might have to bump it up to twice a week. Yeah.
I'll be coming in here with a wheelchair.
Ooh. Yeah. No, but you're right, because there's so many podcasts that start and there's some ones that I've listened to that are pretty good, but man, they peter out. Life gets in the way, and it's very easy. It's like everything else too. Once you lose that momentum, it's very hard to get it back.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's going to be one of our podcasts right there.
Yeah.
About momentum, losing momentum. 'Cause I agree with that 100%, But today, what are we talking about today? I know what we're talking about today.
You do know it was actually your idea. This is true. I was being coy.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about saying no. And I think, we were talking before we started recording, and you have a little bit of different perspective on it. Your perspective comes from more years of being in the business. It's something that I'll probably have perspective on once I've been doing it a little bit longer. Yeah. You know how it is, right? Like I can't see things from your vantage point because you've been at it for so much longer. Yeah. I wanted to talk about saying no in business, right? And I'll tell you what I mean by, and I don't necessarily, okay, I'll tell you, let's start with Robles. All right. In the beginning, when we started Robles, we didn't say no to anyone. Like we said yes to everything, right? Yep. I remember there was a point where schools would call us and we didn't have minimums. We would just we just take whatever business we could get. Then when real estate, we wanted to start getting into real estate, I would show up at deals. And first I would feel so desperate. And that's the key word in all of this. Yeah. Because people, I wasn't getting a lot of leads. It was hard to drum up leads. That's the hardest part of being an investor, I think, is finding, not just finding leads, but finding quality leads. Yes. So when someone did call me and it seemed like this was going to be a good lead and I would have to take the time and drive down there, by the time I got there, I was like, it's so hard to come up with this lead. It was so hard negotiating on the phone. Now I'm taking my time out of the day to drive out there and meet with them. The last thing I want to do is say no to this deal. I'm going to find a way to make this deal work.
Right.
And I never lost money in real estate. So that's going to tell you something. in terms of I have a good mentor, but it's also going to tell you a lot about real estate. I mean, it's if you're just following even 80% of the fundamentals, it's going to be hard to lose money in real estate. I think at the very least you might break even. I mean, you really have to lie to yourself when you're looking at a deal to lose some money, or be lied to and not do your due diligence. But I did some deals that I look back on and I'm like, man, I could have done a lot better. And actually, even though I made money, it was a ton of stress.
Yeah.
Because I would show up to deals and I would look at these homes and I'd be like, man, it's going to take a lot of work just to get them up and going. But after I get it up and going and I, get the rehab done, I can probably make 7-8K on it. Right.
Right.
And, I think like I said, the key word is being desperate. What it reminds me of is, like if you're on the dating scene, right? And you're a guy or you're a girl, and everyone that comes up to you and asks you for a date, you say yes, yes, yes. To me, that shows like you're desperate, right? But if you get that person,
how many people used to come up to you? Oh, good God, man!
But
I think every guy in the audience is going, but like women come up to you. How does that work?
Like you're begging, like I'm begging, but, but when you get to a point where you're like, no, I don't want to go out with you because I'm not desperate, right? Like I'm going to wait for that right person that I really, really want to be with, that we have a lot in common. I know I'm going to enjoy spending time with this person. Right. And that's how you should look at business. Right. Don't be desperate. And I think in the beginning, I'm going to say it's a word that my 7-year-old called me the other day, and I was just cracking up. We were playing some game and he's like, gosh, Dad, you're such a noob. And it's a new word that he's and I was like, I could not stop laughing. But in the beginning, saying yes to everything is such a noob move when it comes to business and when it comes to investing. I've noticed that seasoned investors and seasoned business people become very good at saying no. We brought up this point before about Warren Buffett, and he says in business and in investing, there's no such thing as a called strike. It's like in baseball, nobody's calling strike 1, strike 2, strike 3. You never have to swing until you see the perfect pitch and knock it out of the park, right? Yeah. And I think when you're a noob, as Yusuf would say, you're more desperate. Like you want to do these deals, and you're that you're going to be more inclined to do a lot of bad deals. Now, fast forward several years, Robles is actually we actually vet the client. We won't work with just anybody. We have a limited number of clients that we'll actually work with when it comes to academy gis. Obviously, we do the custom one-offs for anyone and everyone. But when it comes to an academy, we vet the academy, we vet the owner, and we're not going to just do business with anyone. We've said no to a lot of academies that wanted us to make their custom gis. Now, fast forward in real estate investing, my God, being able to say no has been the best thing that I've ever done. Yeah. The amount of stress that I felt on my shoulders to try to find a way to make a deal work. Yeah. Now it's just like you're having to really sell me on the deal because I'm going there with the intention of saying no. Yeah. Right. Which is going to lead to two things. One, I walk away from a deal and I don't have to do any work, zero. Right. And that's less stress for me. I don't have to think about it ever again. Yep. But if I do say yes, it's probably because you had to drop your price so many times to make it worth my while. Yeah. So saying no, the power of saying no. But when I brought it up to you, you kind of had a different perspective on how you were using no in your business and in life.
Yeah. So I think they are connected though, but my no is more in real estate, the sort of price points and I'll just say types of people that I want to work with is changing. So for many, many years, I prided myself in being sort of in low price points because I was always like, there's less risk. You got less money at risk. The percentage of return you can make is better. And I really sort of sold myself and people that would talk to me about this idea. And it worked for a long time. But at a certain point, I guess I've gotten tired of dealing with a lot of the extraneous things that come with low price points.
Mm-hmm.
And so in many ways, I'm kind of looking at next year as I'm not quite sure what it's going to be, but we were talking about more like higher end Airbnbs. We were talking about a lot of different ideas that would be almost the polar opposite of what I've been dealing with. Because at a certain point, the ability to sort of say no to certain deals opens up new possibilities. Because if you're so entrenched in doing things a certain way that just for whatever reason is just no longer the right fit, you can stay busy forever continuing to do what you know you shouldn't be doing anymore. But if you have the freedom to just be like, no mas, I am not doing this anymore, it's a glorious thing. Now, sometimes it's going to still take a while for that train to switch tracks or stop or whatever analogy you
Can I
want to
say something
use.
right there, Carter? Because
Sure
you
can.
you you said something that's so important, and that is you can stay busy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You can stay busy, but are you really making any money?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even if you are, it's
Right? Because
still,
people get that confused with,
yeah.
oh, I'm busy, so I'm
Oh,
successful. No,
yeah.
you're not.
That's a huge thing with entrepreneurs is that it can become very, it's weird because when you say no to a lot of things, sometimes as an entrepreneur, it's like there may be a gap in your day or in your week or whatever it might be. You and I were talking about Warren Buffett earlier and how his main thing is he comes to the office, he reads the paper, he reads books, all that kind of thing. He spends a lot of time thinking. I've read that about Jeff Bezos too. It's like he doesn't have a ton of meetings. A lot of his time is spent thinking. He's like, I just want to figure out one good idea every day. So
Love it.
this idea of these entrepreneurs always hustling, I'm always doing this, I'm always doing that. Okay, but two of the most successful men in the history of time don't. So, and especially somebody like Buffett, who's got probably the best track record that will ever be, ever. Um, I'm going to go ahead and listen to him. And when you talked about the relationship thing, kind of using that same analogy of Mo being this guy who, I don't know if you were on the cover of Teen Beat or what was happening, but Mo had a lot of people coming up to him wanting to date him. It's pretty important. Or maybe you're good friends with Marky Mark. I don't know what was
I used to
happening.
be in a band. You might have heard of it. It's Menudo,
Yeah, that's
back in the
right.
day.
Yeah, I can believe it too. So he's hanging out with Ricky Martin. He's like,
Yeah.
man, it's Ricky Martin. I'm getting all these chicks. But so using that analogy, I'm looking more and more at things that rather than sort of short-term transactional deals, I'm looking for long-term things. And business is a long-term commitment. It is a
Mhm.
long-term relationship, and those are the type of assets I'm looking for now. Like everything I'm looking for, it's got to be something I want to hold on to. I want to hold on to for at least 5 years, maybe
And
10 years.
you know who you're and here's the thing, who there's someone that you just mentioned that 10x is that whole idea, and that's Warren Buffett.
Yeah,
When
absolutely.
he
Yeah.
buys something, he says, I want to hold on to it forever.
Yeah, and that's I think that's a great way to approach it because if it's something where you're like, this could work for a while, but I don't know about this business model or whatever, then it's not a good deal. You know, it's like, and that's when you're looking at it for like a true commitment. That in many ways, so you're saying no to the things that would not be a true commitment, or it's like, this could work for a little while, but then it might crash and burn.
Less is more. Less is
That
more.
really that gives you, it's weird, it gives you a total sense of freedom because you no longer have this fear of missing out, you no longer have this distracted nature. It's much more just like I'm looking for assets that I'm willing to hold on to forever. And for me this has been immensely freeing because it's like it's taken all the confusion out of what I want to do next. Now I don't necessarily have one specific asset type in mind, and I don't think I need to. It's just much more what are things that I'm looking to buy and hold on to forever that'll continue to make money for me that I can get for under market value. I mean, and just
I
keeping
love
it
it.
that simple, that frees up stuff so much. And it makes me look at a lot of the stuff that I have right now and I go, I'm dumping this stuff because I'm already just not that into it anymore. Just not that into that property anymore. So it's, it's time to get rid of that. So by having that criteria, it just makes things much clearer and much simpler. And I think when things are clear and simple, you start making better decisions. And I think that's true for an analogy I would use for jiu-jitsu is the great Marcelo Garcia.
Hmm.
Now, Marcelo was one of the first guys.
Everything all right?
One moment.
Okay.
Sorry, the my dog has found the Christmas decorations. I'm sorry, the my dog has
I
found
love it.
the chew toy, which is the Christmas decorations. Um, I didn't know what I was talking about. What was
Marcelo Garcia,
yes, Marcelo
less
Garcia.
less is
So
more.
less is more. So Marcelo was one of the first guys that I really studied who really had like a system of jiu-jitsu. And his mentality was always that if you just have a definite thing that you're looking for in each position, you don't have to think about it and there's no hesitation. So he would do all his chokes with his right arm. So everything was about setting up the neck so it would be on his right side. So if he was on his left side, he had the spin move that he'd do to get to his right side. If it was his right side, he'd just knock it down and just put it right into his right arm. So he never had, if the guy was one direction or the other, he knew exactly where he was going to go because everything was to set it up on his right side. And so by doing that, he never had to hesitate. And he said that the reason he did that is that he's like, well, I've got one side that's really good and the other side that's okay. If I try and get even on both sides, I'm going to be okay on both sides. But if I know exactly where I'm headed, no matter what the situation, then there's no hesitation and I can act right away. So by saying no to getting ambidextrous on things, he was actually much more efficient because there was never hesitation. It was never like, he's on this side. Okay. It was always, everything was right back to the same spot.
I love it.
So,
Let me ask you this: how about should you ever say no to training, or should you ever say no to training with certain people?
oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I,
Yes.
let's talk about saying no to training, right?
Yeah.
Because we were just talking about that as well
Yeah.
before the show. I mean,
Yeah.
listening to your body and your body's telling you no,
Yes.
and you're like, yes, you will, because I need
Is
to
this an R.
create
Kelly
mental.
song that we're doing right now or something? My mind is telling me no. My body's saying, yeah, something. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't. That's bad. That's a bad analogy. But no. But you're right. So the thing is with it's weird because you read about all these Americans and the obesity epidemic and all these people that literally like never work out in their life or whatever. And then there's our group of friends where you have to talk yourself out of doing something. Like you have to talk yourself out of training like half the time. Like, and that's a weird thing where most people have to convince themselves to work out. Most of the people I know have to stop themselves from working out too much. So it's a weird dynamic. But yeah, I think that, with training and things like that, especially as you get older, you do have to leave something in the tank, as we talked about. And I did not leave anything in the tank a couple weeks ago for a couple.
You didn't say no. You just kept going and
I
kept,
just kept going.
And there was a point probably in training where you were feeling like, man, I'm gassed right now, but you didn't say no.
Yeah.
You could have easily said,
Yeah.
hey, I'm done. My body's already feeling it, but you wanted to push past your comfort zone, which I think there's a time and a place.
Yes.
But
Yes,
now we're
that
paying
time
for
and
it a
place
little.
is pre 40. That's the time and place. No, it's weird because like I never find myself looking at the clock,
Uh-huh.
but I found myself looking at the clock in both sessions, and that should have been the sign. Because if I'm
Yeah.
panicked on how much time there is still in a round, that's not good.
Yeah.
So, so what that made me do is now I've spent the last couple weeks recovering, and now that we're going away on Wednesday, another recovery week, which means training tomorrow is dubious at best, and which is a bummer because it's like you kind of miss out on things. So by saying no, you actually get a chance to train more often, even if it's not as hard. I would argue that consistent training at a lower level is better overall, not only for your skill development, but for your health and everything else. The slow and
Less
steady,
is
I
more.
think I just think it's better.
Yeah.
Being consistent is better than going super hard and then having to take time off. A lesson I theoretically knew and somehow forgot, and
Yeah.
now I've learned again. And then as terms of saying no to specific partners, Mo has watched me say no to people more than once.
Yes.
Just straight up.
And I'm telling you, I admire it. In
Yeah.
fact, I live for the moments I stop what I'm doing just to watch that interaction take
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
As the guy approaches you and says, "Hey, you want to just do this?" and you're like, "Nah."
No. No.
I
Because
love.
yeah, to me, the way I look at it is number one, I don't feel like I have to prove myself to anybody anymore. Number two, everything is a cost benefit analysis. And there's some training partners that you're going to have that you should feel safe and you can try whatever. And then there's other people where you're always going to have to be on guard for your own personal safety. And I don't think that you should necessarily always avoid those people, because there is a reality, and you do want to remember that we are doing something dangerous. And sometimes you do need to play with fire a little bit just to remember how much burning sucks.
Yeah.
But you have to be in the right state of mind. And to me, that state of mind is, I am willing to get hurt for what I'm going to learn in this session. And if you're not committed to that, not committed to willing to accept that to be happening, then you shouldn't do it at all. And with the person specifically that we're talking about, there's some times where I'm like, okay, I'm willing to have this lesson. And there's other times I'm like, nope, I'm not willing to get hurt right now. And it's always a possibility with him. So I'll just say no. And
I love it.
That's it. And to me, it should be, people always talk about there's the one person that they're worried about getting hurt with or whatever. And to me, there's nothing wrong with just saying no to that.
The one person I worry about that with everyone.
Well, you should worry about it with me, because I chronically hurt people, but actually you're the only one I hurt. But I think there's nothing wrong with that. And this whole idea of you have to be able to train with everybody and blah, blah, blah. It's a weird thing that jiu-jitsu has the mentality. And I think a lot of that was carried over from the time where a lot of people didn't know jiu-jitsu. So you would see seminars and you're like, oh, Hickson's rolling with like 40 people in a row. Yeah, 40 guys who don't know jiu-jitsu. Okay, fine. Like, if you want to roll with 40 people who are not wrestlers, who don't know jiu-jitsu, it's not going to be that hard. Mm-hmm. But this idea that you're just going to train with anybody and everybody who walks through, sometimes, yeah.
Jiu-jitsu is really not a secret anymore.
But yeah, that's the thing. The idea that you would do that with any other combat sport is ludicrous. Like, you would never do that in boxing. No trainer in history is going to let their boxer just box with whoever.
No,
like whoever comes in, just throw him
I'm
in.
140. It's like, hey, can you box with my guy over here? He's 220. He he hasn't turned pro yet, but he has about 150 amateur fights.
Yeah. So wait,
the weight matters.
When I first tried boxing, like when I was 20, it was like at this neighborhood park thing, and there's just sort of like this informal thing that happened a couple times a week. And the first time I sparred, this guy that I sparred, I didn't know this until after the sparring session, but this guy was about to fight. He was about to have his, I don't even think it was his first fight, like within a couple weeks or whatever. And I'm like, he's putting me in with some dude who's like already fighting or whatever. He wouldn't put me in with somebody who knew nothing or whatever. And it was like, that's just sort of how, even that seems crazy.
What did you do to that guy that he didn't like you?
Well, I'll tell you what I didn't. I'll tell you who I didn't do anything to is hit the other dude. That was not fun. But that was my last boxing experience until I met you.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Is there a time where, see, now this one I want you to really think about this one.
Yeah.
Because you and I talk about that when you really believe in your product, you don't let anybody walk out your door without them being able to benefit from your product. So
sure.
If I'm a jiu-jitsu school owner, my product is jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I shouldn't let anybody walk out my door without them having experienced the benefit of jiu-jitsu. So should school owners ever say no to the students that sign up?
Yes. Sorry, I should have thought about it, but yes.
Tell me why. Tell me why.
Because jiu-jitsu is not for everyone, number one. Number two, you are teaching people how to hurt somebody very efficiently, and you should be selective in who you show that to. Number three, what is the old saying? A bad apple spoils the whole bunch. I mean, there's some people that are just. We had a guy. You were actually there. Well, you weren't there when this happened, but so back in the day, open mats on Fridays were pretty crazy. There was a ton of people and from different schools, and just it would be kind of chaos because it would be some people from Sean's, but a lot of people from all over Austin or around. And so you wouldn't know who all the people were. And there was this one guy who was kind of strange, and he was just like doing like Kevin and I were working or something like that. And my dog got back into the Christmas things again. So anyway, this guy was kind of weird. And a couple days later on Sunday, we were all training, Everybody left, and I took a shower, and I was the last one to leave. And I get to my car, and it's the same sort of weird guy that was there on Friday. And he's like, "Oh, I was told I have 24/7 access to this gym." I'm like, "Okay, well, yeah, I mean, you should call Sean and ask him." And he gets like real close, and he's just like, "Well, I was told. I mean, that's what Mr. Cooper said." Like, he's just kind of just keep like made me very uncomfortable and very much wishing I had like a firearm with me at that moment, because it was just like, this dude he was a big dude. He's like way, way, way in my space, and it was just weird. So finally, I was just like, "Listen, man, it's not my school. It's not my call. You're going to have to talk to the owner. I can't help you." And I left. And I called Sean, and I'm like, this guy should not be training at your school. Like, there's something wrong with this guy. Like, there's something off. And I guess I was not the only person to complain. So he ended up giving the guy his money back, and the guy ended up leaving all these weird messages on his answer machine and all this. And it's like, there's some people where it's like, man, they're just not good people. I mean, jiu-jitsu can change people, yeah, but it can change people for the worse too. This idea that everybody's modest in jiu-jitsu, I don't know who people are talking about, because there's a lot of cocky people in jiu-jitsu. And when you have somebody cocky who now has skills, that's somebody scary.
And just created a monster.
Yeah, you've created a monster. So this idea that you should, especially when they're really physically gifted anyway, and now you teach them enough so they know what to do, how to not get caught and stuff or whatever, dude, you can develop a nightmare of a person. So yeah, I don't think jiu-jitsu is for everyone. I think that school owners definitely should think about, because here's the way I would look at it.
I was waiting for you to drop the old Spider-Man with great power
comes great responsibility. Yeah. So, I think
that's almost as bad as you either win or you learn.
Win or you learn, bro. I still got to get you that book. So the way I look at it, a school owner should look at the school as a whole and say, like, okay, if this student comes in, how many people are going to benefit versus how many people are not going to like it, going to feel uncomfortable and leave. Like, because if you bring in some students, some people, you may lose students over bringing certain people in. So you have a net loss on that. So then going by that same mentality of, I want to help as many people as possible with this product, which is jiu-jitsu. Well, if you lose students, now you're helping less people. So that would be my sort of long way of saying why that. It's just, there's some people that are, I don't know. I mean, to me, jiu-jitsu is a long journey, and it's hard enough as it is. And if there are people that are just somebody you're just not going to like for whatever reason, then to me, there's no reason to teach them. And I would say same thing for training partners. There's enough good people out there. Find people that you get along with versus somebody who's, he's super good, but he's a jerk, or whatever word you want to use. To me, I don't care how good they are. It's probably not worth it. It's just probably not worth it, because there are people around, and there's people in Texas, there's people in Austin, and he knows who he is, and I'm talking about him, who have a whole group of people who think he's the greatest guy and this and that. And I just watched this guy bully all his training partners, not teach them anything. Anyone who pisses him off, he beats up and does whatever. And it's like, why would you want to train with this guy? Like, he's clearly somewhat psychotic. He's clearly a total bully. And yeah, he's good at jiu-jitsu. Great. There's lots of people that are great at jiu-jitsu that are not bad people. So
he trains at Cobra Kai.
He kind of embodies the old Cobra Kai spirit. I don't know if I would say the new Cobra Kai, although with John Kreese back in the mix, maybe it is more of that. But anyway, season 3, yeah.
I can't wait for season 3.
God, I can't wait either.
Awesome, my brother.
Yeah.
Episode 90 in the books.
Just say no.
Just say no.
Nancy Reagan said, just say no.
Yep. That was some great insight. Thank you for that, Carter.
Thank you.
Be sure to check out the Jiu-Jitsu of Life for this podcast and our older podcast. Also, be sure to go to Apple iTunes, leave us a stellar review. Check out Robles.com, makers of the world's finest custom Jiu-Jitsu apparel. From all of us at the Jiu-Jitsu of Life, we wish you guys a great week and nothing but the best, both on and off the mat. Take care.
Thank you, guys.